Google, say topics for podcast, like questions to ask a podcast. Even though your team and you give me like a flow, hey, this is how you do it. But if you run out of ideas, just Google it and you can find ideas or topics or questions or how to run your podcast to your personality as far as the questions go.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
Welcome back to the podcast on podcasting. It's your friend, Adam, AAA Adams. And today I've got an actual friend on the podcast. Name is Javier Hinojo. Javier, how are you, sir?
I am doing well. Thank you so much, Adam, for having me on.
And Javier, you recently started a podcast, and I should pull it up because your podcast is crushing it. And so congratulations on that. In a very short amount of time, I believe you're easily in the top 10%. Like, I just had another podcast guest on the show, and he has been doing his show for about 6 months. And I was beyond impressed that his podcast was already in the top 10%, but I think yours beat him. You got there a little bit faster. So I want to get your story, why you started a podcast, how long it took you to start a podcast. I'm really looking forward to figuring that out with you. But I will share with our listener, you and I have got something in common. We both do real estate investing as well. Is that right?
And we're both good looking dudes.
We're incredibly handsome with amazing facial hair.
Exactly.
My hair isn't quite as good as your hair. Yours is like on point. And you and I, you know what's funny? We've known each other for a minute because we were introduced by some other people.
Yep.
But we just met in person at an event like just a couple months ago, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, a few weeks ago, we met in Tampa. So thank you for the shirts. They fit perfect.
Do they?
Yeah, perfect.
I was worried. Now I need coffee mugs.
There you go. Yeah, Adams podcast on podcasting, and you can put something on there so you can write in whatever you feel like that day. Like some days I'm tired, some days I'm in a
I
bad
think
mood
I've
now.
seen it. Didn't you post it on social and you really put tired?
Yeah, like today I'm tired, today I'm in love, today I'm kicking ass, today I'm firing somebody, like, whatever you feel like, right?
Today I'm recording an episode. Today I like it because it's just a fun way to stay in front of like your social media followers. For example, you can be posting this on like Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn or wherever. Where do you post your stories when you do that?
Like the Insta stories, those are like just on IG, right? It's good to have about 10 stories a day. So I can actually do like 10 cups and you take 10 pictures, and then my staff has a library of pictures, right? But I kind of like to do it the day of, right? Like today I'm cooking breakfast for my wife. Today I'm buying an apartment building, right? Or today I got punched in the face. Like not literally, but like, I had a letdown. So even thought about for you, like you can have podcasts, right? Today's topic is bam, right? My podcast topic is boom, whatever, right? You can do cool stuff like that.
That is cool. Hey, speaking of your social media, Javier, I've noticed a bunch of cars, and it's like, I don't know if you own these cars or if somebody at your office owns these cars. What is going on with all these like luxury, old school, expensive, exotic cars that are in this like huge area? Are these your cars or what?
So I'm a member of this car club, and it's full of exotic cars, right? And so my office is right on the second floor with all glass, and I can look down. There's Ferraris, there's Bentleys, there's like $30 million worth of cars in that. It's a warehouse, but it's really nice inside.
Yeah.
We got a bar, we got a private chef. I can hold events there. That's where I do some of my recordings, like my YouTube recordings.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I mean, I got a 2-car garage down there with a AC and a window into the other garage, and it's my chill zone. I got it all furnished out, and I go hang out there.
So what do you need in order to join your exotic car club?
Well, when I joined,
exotic car?
when I joined with my 2000. I got a classic. I showed up with my son's 2007 Chevy Cobalt, piece of junk car. I think we spent like $1,800 on it. And when you turn to the right, it makes this loud clonk, 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 clonk. So when I went to interview to join the club, I'm pulling into the club and it's making all this noise, and I parked all the way in the back. And there was somebody outside on the phone. And I walk in, I got early there too. I wanted to be the owner. The guy lets me in, and I sit down. I'm like, hey, I'm here to see the owner, to join the club. 5 minutes later, the guy walks in and says, hey, I'm the owner, right? The guy that saw me coming in with a car making all this noise. So to answer your question, no, you don't need an exotic car.
Okay. Got it.
You don't need an exotic car. It does help though. It does help.
Yeah. And do you get to drive everybody else's cars?
No, I don't get to drive everybody else's cars, but we do have like cars and coffee. I mean, I guess you say I can have an exotic car, whatever is exotic to you, right? There'll be some cars that are 50 grand or like $1 million, right? So whatever you like.
My cheap Honda was almost 50,000, 47,000 for a Pilot. Well, I did put a 1-inch lift on it, of course, that
there you go.
They don't just charge you by the inch. Anyway, it's so dumb. I shouldn't have spent that, but I'm like 50,000 for an exotic car. Like I barely got a mom car for 47,000.
Well, I mean, you can have like a 2012 like M6 BMW, which used to be like 140,000 back in the day. You can probably buy that for like 50K, and it's a nice car.
Nice.
It's a really nice car.
So Javier, let's dive in and talk a little bit about your podcast. And for starters, could you tell us a little bit about your business and how your podcast relates to your business?
Sure. So I've been in real estate for 6 years, and I used to flip a lot of houses. And 2 years ago, I started buying apartment buildings. A lot of people do the social media first, the podcast first, and then they buy real estate. Well, I went in and bought real estate before I started doing any really heavy social media or podcasting, right? So I bought $50 million worth of real estate. That's when I started my podcast. There's really no right or wrong way of doing it. I don't really know. That's just the way I did it. Just kind of connect my experiences. That's why I call it the naked truth of real estate investing. And I do have pants on right now. Even though Adam told me, hey, I think you would get more listeners if you did it on your underwear. But I said, I don't know. So I just about the only advice I've not followed, Adam, just let you know.
The only thing you haven't followed. Okay.
Yep. You know what? I would be maybe top 1%. I think I'm like at 2% or something like that.
You're at top 2%. And you could have just been naked and got all the views.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's kind of hard to see a podcast, but yeah, you could see a podcast, right? Get more earballs. That's what I call them, the earballs, right? But yeah, I mean, just kind of talk about what I've done in real estate, my mistakes. I might get folks on the show and talk about their biggest mistakes and what's working for them. So yeah, it goes together. It's great. I like it. It's like a therapy session. It's really weird.
How does it benefit your company? Like, it sounds like they are aligned with each other, but in what ways does the podcast actually grow your business?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was at an event this past weekend in Orlando, and there was 950 people there, something like 850 people. And I must have had at least a dozen people come up to me and mention my podcast. Oh man, listen to your podcast. I'm like, I don't know who these people are, right? I'm like, oh, holy crap, really? That's awesome.
That is really cool.
Yeah, people come up and it was so easy to connect with them, right? Once they saw my name, like, oh shoot, like you got a podcast, and I listen to it, and it's just a lot easier to connect, especially since I'm there and I buy apartments. Some people there are general partners, which that means they buy the apartments and they do all the operations or some part of the operations. And some people are limited, like they're investors. They want to put money in your project. So just from that, just having that credibility already and that top of mind, kind of like, hey, I know this guy, make that connection right away. It's a lot easier if you need to raise capital or find some partners.
Yeah.
A lot easier.
Why do you call it the naked truth? Like, how does that help you stand apart from other podcasts? Because that's the big thing that I want our listener to do is I want to make sure that they're finding a way to see everything else that's out there, but to still start a podcast in that same genre, but to find their little niche. So what is the naked truth doing that's different from some of the other real estate podcasts?
Yeah, I always think just be yourself, right? So how could I be myself? And I just thought about that name, right? I said, okay, how can you be transparent? Always be who you are, right? Either on social media, on a podcast. So when somebody meets you, you're still the same person.
Yeah.
Right now, depends what you're doing, right? You still got to do business. When it comes to business, I get super serious. This is my personality. And I said, you know what? I got to come up with something that fits my personality, which I say, hey, look, the naked truth about real estate investment, because I will tell you the mistakes that I've made, the mistakes that I'm making right now, because it's not easy, right? And everything doesn't go as planned. I'll give you an example. When I meet somebody or I know somebody and you're together with your spouse, the guy will be like, hey, so how are you guys doing? The guy's like, oh, we're doing great. I never asked the guy. I'm like, how are you guys doing? And I look at the girl because she'll tell you exactly, what's going on, right? So for me, that's just the way I want to do it. It fits my personality. It's not always perfect. Business is not always perfect. Relationships aren't always perfect. So don't fake it, right? I mean, just be transparent.
Javier, how would you feel if I played your intro for everybody?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. You don't mind? All right, cool. I'll be pulling it up here in a sec. Well, I would like to understand just like the challenges that you needed to overcome to start your podcast. With that said, like, The first question is, from the time that either you thought you might want to have a podcast or the time that somebody, the first person said, you've got to have a podcast, whether it was from someone else or from you, and fast forward all the way to the time that you hired us to kind of work with you to launch your podcast, how many days, weeks, months, or years went by from the time you were like somehow considering it to when you actually launched?
That is an awesome question, Adam. So a lot of times, sometimes you have a self-limited belief, like self-limiting beliefs, right? Like, who the hell wants to hear you speak? Who wants to hear me speak? What kind of advice can I give? Doesn't matter where you're coming from. Listen, you will connect with somebody, right? So I think that was probably the biggest thing for me. It's like, who's going to listen to me? Like, what do I got to say? Like, I felt like I didn't have anything to share. It was really weird because you don't think that way, but maybe because it was a podcast and everybody that I've seen podcasting, man, they're great speakers. They can present. They're just amazing presenters and they have big businesses, right? So I have to be like them to be able to do a podcast. And that's bullcrap. You don't have to be like them, right? You got to be like yourself. And so that was number one. Well, as soon as I got that switch turned like a year ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast. But I was buying a whole bunch of real estate. I was growing my business. I was putting systems and processes. And then when you told me you got to have 1,000,001 episodes ready before you launch, I'm like, holy crap, 1,000,000 episodes before I launch. So I said, oh my gosh, right? Anyway,
what did I really say? There's no way I said 1,000,000.
I think you said like 56 or something like that. I forgot what it was. And I was so busy and I was working like 60, 70 hours a week. And I was throwing in like a couple of episodes a day to have him on the vaults, right? Back in the library, just have him easy to coming out. That's what you do, right? And you tell me, hey, you want to like, here's different levels. How do you want to hit it? I'm like, hey man, let's hit it. Let's go balls to the wall. Let's go as hard as we can because that's just the way I did it. For me, it was really making that commitment, right? I didn't want to have a step in, and 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's probably why it took me the longest, just making sure I found the time and I was able to commit and try to get to all your KPIs you gave me, right? I didn't want to fall short. So that's probably why I didn't do it earlier because I didn't have the time.
So it took a little over a year. Part of it was that you didn't feel like you had time. And part of the reason that you didn't feel like you had time is because I told you have 1,000,000 episodes ready to go before you could ever launch. Hopefully the listener knows I did not say 1,000,000.
No, you can start with hopefully.
So with your podcast, one of the things that I appreciate with your personality, one of the things, and I think I'm about to share two as long as I can remember them both, you don't have to be like them. You can just be yourself. That is something that's really important. Like, it doesn't matter what genre we're starting our podcast in. There are other people in that same genre almost 100% of the time. And for example, real estate's one of the top 3 most busy type of podcasts. There's like comedy podcasts, there's real estate podcasts, and nobody even knows the third one because it's so small for the most common types of podcasts. So starting a show in real estate, I think it can be intimidating, regardless of the industry, but it can be intimidating, especially when we know that there's a lot of other people in that industry. And we would think, because of imposter syndrome, we would be thinking like, man, I'm not that person and I can't do what she does. And their podcast, they have co-hosts. I don't want to effing co-host. I don't want that. That sounds horrible. I'm already married. I already got to figure out how to deal with putting the dishes out and leaving the toilet seat up and whatever else, squeezing the toothpaste wrong or hanging the toilet paper opposite, which that is a big pet peeve for me.
I don't even know which way it's supposed to go. Roll down or roll up. I guess down.
The easy way is the way that it comes from the top, Javier.
Rip it, right?
We're already in a fight and we're not even married yet.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's me just like trying to decide, should I have a show host that I got to kind of wait and see where they're taking their questions? When I kind of have a direction that I want to go, it can be tough. You don't want to have to be like them. You can just be yourself. Another thing that I literally appreciate, I think it's funny because with you, when you started your show, I think I was pushing you toward our like middle package. I'm pretty sure I was pushing you to the middle package.
Yep.
And you're like, well, what's this other one? That's a lot more expensive.
Yeah. It was the most expensive package you had.
And I'm like, well, I could tell you about that. I'm just going to do that one. Why do it if I'm not going to go all in? And that's one thing that I appreciate with you is you do go all in. And on top of that, it's not a ready, fire, aim. It sounds like a ready, fire, aim, because you're jumping 2 feet forward. But I truly believe that every time you've done something, you found stops and ways, like, for example, working with a company that's going to take care of a lot of that stuff, or partnering with other people, with you owning like over $50 million of real estate before you ever did your podcast. It's like, how do you get to 50 million? It's a combination of making sure you're taking action, but also protecting yourself and your investors while buying those properties. And I love that about like your natural personality. I think that it's one of the reasons why you've gotten so far.
Well, thank you so much. And to hit that point again, one thing that I forget to mention was the fact that I didn't really know anybody out in the podcast world that would give me an easy button. So I'm all about an easy button. I don't have any tattoos in my body, but if I got a tattoo, a big old easy button on my chest, like bam, easy button. I mean, that's what you guys provided for me. You're like, Javier, all you got to do is open up the Zoom link and we'll do the rest. I'm like, awesome. Like that was it. Like, okay, good. Adam, can you find somebody to argue with my wife for me, please? And that'd be the best.
If it's about how the toilet paper roll goes, I'll do it for free.
Awesome.
There's no question. I will help facilitate that the toilet paper roll needs to go from the top, not from the back.
Makes sense. It makes sense. It makes total
any
sense.
Other argument? Yeah, I'll try to find someone.
Awesome.
I'll try to find someone.
That was one of the reasons why I had waited such a long time, because I was waiting for the right person to help me with the process. And you know what? I asked one time in a Facebook group, and I must have got like 20 answers, and your name came up 19 out of 20. So I'm like, all right, cool.
I remember that. That's actually on our website now.
Really?
Because there was only 2 times in that group that people were like, how do I start a podcast, or how do I grow my podcast? And you're one of them. And yeah, like lots of people responded, and we were overwhelmingly like the most. And so I'm like, I reached out to my ad guy. I go, you've got to, while we still can, screenshot this stuff, because this is like unheard of. I was so like, wow, I didn't realize people even knew what it was that we did. But
yeah, so
that is funny.
I got that, and then I messaged you right away. You messaged me right back, and we talked. And then when you send me the payment link, I paid within like 30 seconds probably.
You did. I was like, fast. What the fuck? The guy already paid.
Yeah.
I should have raised my prices.
Yeah, I paid fast. Let's go. Let's get stuff done.
I want to talk a little bit about this. So yes, you are using the easy button.
Yep.
However, there's still got to be some challenges that you overcame somehow and in some way to starting your podcast. So could you share some of those things that held you back and how you ultimately got over them?
Sure. So everybody's busy, right? Everybody has a business, everybody has a job, whatever industry you're in. Unless you're kind of retired and not doing anything, right? It's going to be a lot easier to start yourself a podcast. But I was in the middle of buying like 3 apartment buildings, and I was in the middle of buying one like in a week's notice, like that fast. Okay. So it was so busy. And that was probably one of the biggest challenges. I was still building out some teams in my company, and I just didn't feel like I didn't have the time. Right. But I had to make the time, because if I didn't commit to it, it wasn't going to, you already know what you're doing. So you tell me, Javier, you got to do this, 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 and this, so I can get here within those 6 months. Okay, great. Well, if I don't perform, I can't blame you, right? I can only blame myself, because I'm not doing exactly what you told me. So probably one of the biggest challenges was my time. But when I say guys, it's gender neutral. It's guys and girls.
Peeps.
Peeps. Anyways, if I can do it as busy as I was, anybody can really do it. Because I was extremely, extremely busy. So that was one of the things, right? I felt like I didn't have the time. Number 2 was like, hey, where am I going to find people to interview, or what am I going to talk about? Right? Well, there's such a thing called GTS. That's what I tell people all the time. They ask me a question. I'm like, GTS? They're like, what's GTS? It means Google that shit, right? Like, just find topics, right? Google, say topics for podcast, like questions to ask a podcast. Even though your team and you give me like a flow, like, hey, this is how you do it. But if you run out of ideas, just Google it, and you can find ideas or topics or questions or how to run your podcast to your personality as far as the questions go. But probably it was a time, like, who's going to be on my podcast, and then what are going to be my topics, right? And I figure, like, if you can document more than interview in a way, if you want to document your process of whatever you're doing, you can throw that into your podcast, which is great.
I think that that's huge advice. That's really good stuff. Like just kind of, I don't know if you've met Joe Fairless or if you've been on his podcast or anything. Have you, Javier?
So hopefully at some point
I can connect you. He's a good friend. One cool thing about Joe is they do daily podcast episodes. And so, I mean, when I say daily, I'm including weekends as well.
Wow.
And one of the things that he does is it's called a Follow Along Friday. And I believe wholeheartedly that this is part of the reason why he's done so well in business. And not to compare him to you and I, but he's done like around $1.5 billion of real estate assets. And I believe that part of the reason like his listeners convert into his investors for his like real estate stuff is because he does the Follow Along Friday. He basically just talks about his business. Like you said, Javier, you don't have to like always give content. Sometimes you could just kind of update people on what you're doing, what your company is doing, who you're serving. I think that's brilliant. I'm probably going to do more of it as well. Like I can see that it's working for other people. GTS.
Yes.
Google that shit. I swear you commented on one of my social media things. Like I'm like, hey, I got this question. I don't remember if it was about like what kind of oil I should be cooking with because I just ran out of my grapeseed oil. But you're like, Google that shit, man. Like, why are you asking us? Just Google it. Make life easy. The easy button.
Get the algorithm going, man. Get the algorithm going.
In interest of making sure that our listener has a tangible takeaway, you can certainly Google all of this stuff. Shit. Or you could also ATP. You know what ATP is, right, Javier?
ATP.
Get down with ATP. Yeah, okay. You know me.
Yeah, ATP.
Answer the Public is a really cool website. And I think it's literally just like answerthepublic.com. And it can support us as content creators just as well as Googling it. Just go to Answer the Public and type in whatever your industry is. Real estate, for example. And it starts showing all of the Google searches that other people are searching for on Google and already asking. And then you just kind of fill that in. You just kind of answer it. Good stuff. So time was a big one. Content and finding guests was another one. And you mentioned basically GTS is how you overcame the content. How are you getting guests for your show?
You know what's the funny part about it is, whatever it is, if you're into flowers, just join some Facebook groups that has people talk about flowers. Be like, hey guys, I got a podcast. Who would love to come on the podcast? Bam, 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 bam. Right. And you're going to get a whole bunch of people who want to share their experience on smoking weed. I mean, flowers. Sorry. Wrong flower. Wrong flower. No. So, you know, it's just whatever it is, right? If it's cannabis, right? I mean, join some cannabis Facebook group, right? If it's cars, they got cars. If it's real estate, if it's whatever it is, if it's being a mom to 2-year-old, join those groups and podcast about that, and you can find guests there, right? So I mean, it's not that hard. I thought it was gonna be harder, and it wasn't. I
just bought an old, like 1981 Jeep CJ5, and
81, nice.
I had no clue how to
people are like crazy about the Jeeps,
fix it up or where to spend my money on it, and if the engine's good or should be replaced for a Hemi or whatever. And so I didn't realize like this group, because my dad owns a Jeep and I've been Jeeping with him and we've rented Jeeps in Moab and stuff. But I realized like it was a world that I didn't really know that existed or that it could be as popular. I know that sounds silly because it's Jeeps and obviously they're awesome, but I just typed in like CJ groups and Jeep groups in my city. And it was remarkable the amount of people that were also into that. I did the same thing with like mountain biking. I just wanted to back you up. Like, it doesn't matter the industry or what's the word for that? When you're a hobby, it doesn't matter the industry or the hobby.
Yep.
Like there is a group for it. There's a meetup group for it. Go to meetup.com. We'll put that in the show notes. There is a Facebook group for it. Go to facebook.com. We'll put that in the show notes. Whatever you want.
There's some kind of group out there, right? There's some kind of what do we call those groups that they go online and they just create a big old community of it. So
there's everything. It's pretty cool. Any other challenges that you were facing, like to start the podcast, and that you could share how you overcame it?
now, I mean, I'm like, what equipment am I going to use? And you're like, boom, here's what I use. Like, here's a few options. Like, oh my gosh, okay.
That's like my favorite thing that we created, by the way, Javier.
It was super cool.
So if you're listening, I haven't mentioned this in a lot of episodes. I mentioned this in the first like 20 episodes. If you're looking for some equipment that you want to buy, what my team actually created is we just put all of the mics, all of the sound treatment, all of the webcams, anything that we use and that we vetted, and we just put it into one place so you can just get that. But what we did for Javier, we circled him. We
Thank you so much.
We gave all of the stuff that was options and we circled what I personally use.
Yeah.
And that's actually available. You can just get the PDF by going to growyourshow.com/PDF. I'll make sure that goes into the resource section, but it's just growyourshow.com/PDF. The cool thing, yes, it is a lead magnet if you want it to be. If you want to get emailed the piece to where you can do whatever you want with it, you absolutely can. But we've also just put it on the website so you can literally click the hyperlinks. It goes straight to Amazon or wherever you're going to buy that thing. And none of them are marked up. Some of them we might have like an affiliate code, but you can literally see every single piece of equipment that I use because we circle them.
That was the best part because you got a PDF file. I click on the equipment. It took me to the Amazon page. Like, oops, order done. Or I was done. Like 5 minutes.
You're such an action taker. I love that about you. I love that.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. So a few things that you overcame. The time.
Yep.
And you overcame that by just getting over it. And I think you might have cut out a family trip over the summer. B, guests and content. And you solved that by Googling it or going to Answer the Public. And the last one was you didn't really know what you didn't know, like what's a good mic and what should I be spending my money on? And you got that with the little free PDF that we created.
Sure.
Awesome stuff. How are you finding great guests then? If we can go into a little bit more detail, it sounds like you joined some Facebook groups and there's connecting there, but is there like an approach that you're using that's working when you're reaching out to people?
So you got a network, right? So wherever it is you're doing, if you're going to a meetup, you connect with people at a meetup, right? If there's a conference, go to a conference, right? Collect people's phone numbers, collect their cards. That's a really good way to start getting a good Rolodex, I guess you can say, and of people that can come on your podcast. At the very beginning, like there's a lot of Facebook groups. So I can just put on there like, hey, if I'm a member of a particular coaching program or mastermind or whatever, you want to start there because there's more of a connection. But if you're just straight up just on a real estate group or your own Facebook page, hey guys, I got a podcast. Anybody want to talk about real estate? Doesn't matter what subject, come on. That's why I did it at the beginning. Anybody can just come on the show. So I can just do an interview because I needed those 1,000,001 interviews, however many it was.
Yeah, 1,000,001.
I forgot something like that. And now we do 2 a week, which is awesome. I do a solo episode and I interview somebody, which is a lot easier for me. Right. And then now it's like, I can't say I'm a little more picky, but yeah, I am like who's on the show now. Just make sure that we're a good fit. And I usually don't bring like a brand new person that does real estate, right? It's somebody who's already been doing it for a while. So it's just growing, just connecting really. And the best part about it is you don't even have to go live to these conferences if you don't want. Whatever your niche is, you can just do it by joining the Facebook groups and just be active in there. Like answer people's questions, post a question, and just start giving for a couple of weeks. And then you can probably ask, hey by the way, guys, I'm launching a podcast. Boom. And then you'll get some guests.
Good stuff. Awesome. Love it. What about like any podcast hacks or software or tools that you are using, templates, email templates, anything that you use that makes podcasting easier on your end, even though you've got a team working for a lot of it? Is there anything that you do use that you can point to that kind of makes podcasting a little bit easier?
I mean, you guys pretty much do everything for me. You guys edit it. You guys do. I think my marketing team just came up with a different template to kind of match my Instagram feed, which is your team like, all right, cool, we'll use it, boom, boom, boom. And you guys implemented right away. I don't know if I was allowed to say that because then everybody's going to change it.
No. Actually, I'm glad that you brought it up because this is an important topic to just touch on for a moment. Social media changes. Once upon a time, there was no such thing as a Facebook story. Once upon a time, there was no such thing as an Instagram reel. Once upon a time, there was no such thing as a YouTube short.
Yep.
And then these things come out. And the social media platforms, YouTube included, like Facebook, they reward the people that use the new thing. They get more attention. And in the past, before there was reels and stories and all this stuff, my team was working on people's podcasts. But we did it a different way. We've learned that we can make a square image just so it can fit perfectly on Insta. And now Insta doesn't only have squares. Now they'll have rectangle verticals and they'll have rectangle horizontal. And we grow and adapt and learn with our clients. So when you had that, I should say that you're like, maybe I shouldn't have said it, because now we started doing it. We're like, all right, this is where it's going. Like, we need these videos to now have a vertical feed so that it can fit on these other 3 platforms and be accepted, because the squares were no longer being accepted on some of those platforms. So
yeah, you'll get like more algorithm.
You.
The algorithm picks it up a little more, a better quality fit. So
yeah.
And your team was awesome. They back and forth, took a couple of days, but they figured it all out. And now if you look at my Instagram feed, it just all looks really well put together, goes with everything else. And it was awesome. Cool. So for everybody out there listening, yes, it's a lot of work. So find yourself somebody that can do it for you. Easy button, right? Remember that easy button.
Easy button.
It is a lot of work, right? For me, it's time, energy, and money, and you got opportunity cost. Trying to save yourself a couple $100 a month or whatever it is going to cost you an opportunity to go do something else, make some money.
So this podcast is not a real estate podcast. I do real estate, and I had a real estate podcast for a long time. I was hosting real estate events. I'm like, a lot of my friends do real estate investing. And so I will use a real estate thing now to illustrate something that Javier is mentioning. Javier, when I bought my first apartment building in 2008, I was managing apartments in 2007. And by the way, this guy made over $1 million on an 18 unit that I only managed for 1 year. He bought it for $1 million, sold it for $2 million, doubled his money. And I only managed that for 1 year. Like, he only owned it for a year. So I thought, my shit don't stink. I'm like, money is attracted to me. I was doing affirmations without even being told what an affirmation was.
Awesome.
Money is attracted to me. I was like, holy shit. Like, I'm making this guy so much money. I got to do it on my own. So I buy my own apartment in 2008. And my net income was only about just a little over $300 because it was a small one. And my net monthly income was about $300. And I was interviewing management companies, and they were going to be taking the $300 because it's like 10% of the thing or whatever. I'm like, hell no. Like, I'm not wasting all of my money. So guess what I did when I bought my first apartment? I was getting paid like $2 an hour, less than minimum wage, because I'm losing money on contracts because I didn't want to hire an attorney. I'm evicting people because it's 2008 and 9. I'm doing all the work myself and upgrading things, and it costs just as much as just hiring a professional to do it all once. And I remember just being like, what was I thinking doing all of this myself? And I think that a lot of people that are going to have a podcast should be thinking the same thing about their podcast. What was I thinking? Or what would I be thinking trying to learn how to be the tech savvy person and market my whole show? I've got a business to run. At the time in real estate investing, I also had like a handyman company with like 13 employees, and we were crushing it, but I couldn't focus on my business and make thousands per hour because I had to work on this apartment and make like $2 or $3 an hour.
Yeah.
It was really, really frustrating. I learned it the hard way. And I think that kind of shows exactly what you're talking about. Like, if your business isn't editing and publishing and marketing a podcast, maybe stay in your lane. I like that.
It's just
like
a lot easier, save time, energy, headaches, and go do what you want to do. Yeah. I mean, I like the easy button. That was key for me.
Yeah,
for sure.
What else would you pour into? Let's just pretend like, because it's actually true, somebody listening is a brand new podcaster or about to start a podcast. And we talk a lot of really cool things, like helpful, tangible pieces of advice that you've shared with us, getting over imposter syndrome, being yourself. You don't have to be like them. overcoming like time objections, overcoming like guests and content, and using the easy button or working with a team to kind of offload some of that stuff so you can focus. What else do you think that a new podcaster needs to know in order to be successful having a show?
Honestly, it's not as expensive as you think it is. I would say, like, as far as running a podcast or having somebody run it for you, depends, right? There's different levels that you can get some stuff done, but it's not going to break you, right? And a lot of people want to do stuff on their own, especially starting out, because they feel like you said, they're going to save money or they're just going to make it better. But if I've never fixed an engine in a car, I'm not going to learn on YouTube how to fix an engine. I'm not going to fix it better than the mechanic that's been doing it for 20 years. Like, I'm not, right? So it's probably one of the biggest things that as a new person starting like a new business or a new venture, sometimes you go down a rabbit hole of a million things you want to go. You can't even focus anymore. Just make it as easy as possible and focus on what's actually going to, I mean, I guess you could say make you money, right? Like, or whatever it's going to be if it's going to be interviewing and having a podcast, just focus on that, right? Don't focus about everything else, all the details. It might not be as fun anymore. You know? So don't be afraid, right? Don't feel like you have to learn everything, basically. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
It's in the Jeep groups that I joined. There are a lot of people like on the CJ group, which CJs are like the oldest civilian Jeeps. There's people that log on and they're like, guess what? I did this one thing all by myself. Somebody said it was going to cost $600. So I thought, no, I'm going to do it myself. And so I spent the whole weekend trying to learn this and practice this. I went and bought this thing. And granted, it took me a month instead of a weekend, but I was able to get it done and it only cost me $250. And when I see stuff like that, I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, you would rather spend a whole month and $250 than just like a quick $800 and have it done in a weekend, like actual, and know that it's safe. Like if it's your brakes or whatever. To me, I resonate with you. I'm like, I want to hire a professional. I want it to be done right. And the difference between some of these people are like, it's 150 to hire somebody or 75 to do it myself. I'm like, why would you ever do it yourself? You're only saving $75 and it's taking you hours away from your family or away from your hobby or away from your business where you're making hopefully more than $75. Anyway. Does it sound like I'm on a tangent?
I agree. And it pushed me to the...
It's like the toilet paper. Sorry.
I know. No, so somebody said the other day, money's like a time machine. I'm like, what do you mean like a time machine? Yeah, like you can use money to buy time. I'm like, oh, shoot, I didn't think about that. So if it's going to take you a month to fix something, unless you totally love that, like, I mean, unless you love to go in there and get your hands dirty and fix the Jeep, then that's different, right? Because you love it.
Half of them do. And I don't fault them. It's the people that are stressed out and like, they're saving a couple dollars just to
spend the money because the time and energy is going to take you. That money buys you time. It's like a time machine. It kind of takes you back in time. Like it's like now you pay the money now, you get those 10 hours back. You would spend trying to do all your editing, figure out what platforms to put it on and answering all the emails and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, for me, I love easy buttons 100%.
Let's play part of your podcast.
All right.
I've had this pulled up ever since soon after. So I'm playing episode 91.
They're not usually good deals because usually if they're online, they're not the best deal.
You can hear it, right?
Once in a while, you can get lucky and find a good project. Or if you can find one that's been for sale for a while, try to come in and negotiate the price, get some kind of owner financing.
Oh, wait, hold up. I have it on 1.5 speed. I either listen at 1.5 or 2.0 because I'm ADD and it's actually easier. So I just realized the listener probably doesn't want to hear that, especially if they've already got it on 2x speed. That's really freaking fast. Okay, so that was the teaser of the episode. It lasts about 14 seconds. Our goal is 17 seconds or less, and it kind of gets you pulled into the podcast. And here comes the music.
Make the deal work. That is possible.
This is the naked truth about real estate investing. Your host, Javier, has already been through all the brain damage of this business, so you don't have to go through it. That way, you're not exposed to all of the risk of losing your shirt or getting caught with your pants down.
I like how we use expose, caught with your pants down, or losing your shirt, like
and
to tie it in.
Truth. And it's called The Naked Truth. Yeah.
I love
it's
that.
Cool.
Let's dive into another no BS episode right now.
6 ways to get free leads on commercial properties, apartment buildings, or whatever you're trying to buy. I'm going to talk about 6 ways, free ways to do it right now. Okay. Number 1, go on Google.
Love it. Love it. And it's just a short episode where he's pouring into the listener. The 6 ways helps people get attracted and be like, oh, I can take notes of that. So awesome stuff. And I like that you're doing every other episode. We do that too. Like I do a shorter 5-10 minutes, 20 minutes max. And then I do my interviews with other people that usually last 30 to 60 minutes. How long are your interviews?
I'll say 25 to 35 minutes.
How do you keep them like, it's just this interview right now. We've been on the call together for like about 50 minutes. And I'm sure that after the intro and outro, even cutting this couple of things, it's still going to be 50 minutes long. Just out of curiosity, like what do you do to help keep it short? Because I personally think that I could learn from you, Javier, like if you just share, how do you keep them 30 minutes, 25 minutes? That's too hard for me.
No, I just have a free Zoom account, so it shuts me off in 30 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. That'd make it easy for you, wouldn't it? You'd be like, oh my gosh, I got to hurry up.
Sometimes I have a couple of employees that use a free account. Yeah. And when they'll schedule it on their account and it kicks us off, I'm like, why didn't you use my account?
Look, funny story before I continue with that. I was raising money for a project like a week ago, right? I was raising a couple $1,000,000. And it was the first time we used a Zoom to webinar. Like before, I would just send a Zoom link to my investors. This time we had to register, buy a ticket, a free ticket, and it's a webinar. I've never done it before. Well, like 30 minutes in, it said, boom, everybody saw your thing will end in 5 minutes. Like the countdown, like, oh shoot, like it's going to end. I'm like 60% way of the process. And that was fun. Not funny, but I'm like, oh shoot, I'm texting my assistant, buy whatever you got to buy. This better not end in the next 5 minutes because I'm going to be very unhappy. And sure enough, she paid for the license and they continued, right? But anyways.
There was no lapse?
Yeah.
I need your team. That happened to me as well. Okay. And I was like, please buy this right now. It still kicked us off. We got a new account. Like I had an account I have a real estate business and then I've got this company. And so I like started a new Zoom account specific just to grow your show. And that happened for the first time after we thought we had paid for it. And it was like about to shut down. And I was in the middle of a call with a client. And I'm like, Jerisa, please buy this right now. It still got shut down. And it took like a week to get it back on. I was so embarrassed. Like, I'm glad that you had your team got it a lot faster.
Yeah, I had one of them on the call. So I have them on a call just in case I have any issues or something like that. I can just have them help me out right away. But I guess to answer your question, how do I keep it short? I just have a couple of questions I want to ask. And I think just naturally, I have like ADD. I can't sit for a long time, especially if I'm asking the questions. If I'm being asked the questions, I can probably sit for a long time. But as me coming up with more questions, I'll just have 2 or 3. Then I even do the roulette, right? I have my naked truth roulette where I ask 3 random questions about got nothing to do with real estate. And we finished in probably most of them 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
That's awesome.
I like them like that. I mean, it's good for me. There's some that I've gone like 45 minutes. So
cool. Awesome. Javier, if you're listening, The Naked Truth is his podcast. It is just seriously crushing it. It is ranked so high and tons of listeners, tons of people following it. It's already one of the top real estate podcasts. Please check it out. If you're interested in real estate, he's got a great show. And I love that it is no BS. Like it is straight and to the point. Some other like real estate shows, by the way, they're more about like, let's pretend nothing ever goes wrong, because if people think something goes wrong, they're not going to pay for my coaching program. And we need to make money. So we need to make it sound as easy as possible. Javier does it a little bit differently. His niche is to let you know that it's not a perfect world. Things happen and you've got to be just prepared for those things that can happen. So listening to his show is a good way to do that, regardless if you want to operate the deals or if you want to be passively invested in the deals. It's really good to check out Javier's podcast. As he mentioned, he raised like $2 million just a week ago. To some of you, that's like unfathomable. if you want to be part of his deals, go and find him, go and find his podcast. The links to his company and his show are already in the show notes. His bio is also in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, check him out. I really just think the world of this guy. He's impressed me at every step of the game. And I love that he always comes with the realist attitude. Like he's coming from his heart, genuine, and he's just approachable. So check him out. All of that stuff's there. Javier, thank you for spending all the time with us to share your insights about growing a podcast and your successes. If you're listening, not only do I want you to go check his show out, but also I want to remind you that every other podcast episode is a little bit shorter and just me pouring into your business. That's what's going to happen on the very next episode. So stick around and I'll see you there. Bye for now. 2 quick things before you go. Number 1, if you are looking to upgrade like your podcast equipment or just get your very first affordable microphone, then go to growyourshow.com/PDF. That link's in the show notes. Go ahead and scroll down. On that PDF is 100% equipment for your podcasting studio that I've personally vetted. My team has vetted this. We know that it works. We know that it's affordable, and we don't want you paying more for your podcasting equipment. So again, if you're looking to upgrade your equipment or get your very first inexpensive microphone that works great, that's where you go. And then number 2 is got a free course, A to Z, on everything you need to know about podcasting. And you don't have to go anywhere but the podcast in order to access it. You don't have to even give me an email address to access it. It is just the very first 6 episodes of this podcast. So what you'll do is you'll scroll down a bit. You'll click on the all episodes and scroll down because we're hundreds of episodes in. And you'll see that episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is a free course from A to Z on launching a top podcast. Take advantage of those 2 things. I'll see you on the next episode.